Welcome in to the Maize and Brew preview and projection show. And this is our 14th and final preview and projection for Maize and Brew podcast on the SB Nation Podcast Network. I am Luke Ghiardi, joined by Anthony Broome. It has been an absolute pleasure to bring you the first 13 episodes of this. And we had to save the best for last year on our preview and projections as we look at every single team in the Big Ten, live on the Maize and Brew YouTube and Twitch channels here tonight. Good to have you all aboard. Great to see some comments already rolling in. Anthony, what's going on, man?
Not good. Not good. I said not bad. It's good to be here is what I meant to say. I'm a little too excited, a little too amped up for this. This is the first time that we have done a live stream. A lot of you guys will hear this after the fact, but for those of you who are live on YouTube and Periscope, welcome. We'll try to make this one a little more interactive than what the other episodes have been. And we'll go a little bit longer than those other episodes have been because this is really – next week is game week. So this is really the last of our off-season podcast, previews, projections, whatever you want to call them. So this is going to be the big Michigan preview. So we're going to go through game by game. We're going to do the Vegas over-under thing. We're going to look at what's there, what's on the roster. The state of the Harbaugh era so far. Like, we're going to hit on all that. So it'll be a little bit longer episode, but hey, analytically speaking, that's not the worst thing in the world for you guys that are watching on video. So that's
real quick before we get into Michigan here. We do have Big Ten football this Saturday. Illinois taking on Nebraska. So you might want to go check out those preview and projections episodes before Saturday.
Yeah, and I told Luke this over the weekend. It's funny how we went through the analytics, and the only way I can explain this is because it was of the angry fan base got a hold of it. Our Nebraska preview is the one that's done the best so far.
Oh,
not
God,
by a wide margin, but
did we get some comments on it? I tried.
Don't care.
No, I don't care either. But I'm glad the angry fans got a hold of it.
But they've all been pretty good, and they've done pretty well. So thank you to you guys who have supported those. And like I said, we told you throughout that we were saving the best for last. Best question mark?
Let's hope so.
We can just kind of get right into it.
Yeah. Last year, as we start off everything, we kind of look at the previous year and previous 5 years. Last year, obviously, was not great to be a Michigan football fan. 2-4 after a strong start. Going on the road to Minnesota, beating a top 25 Gophers team and beating them handily, and we got the quotes that we like to get. This team is different, This team just feels different. Our guys aren't going to hang their heads when things go sour, and well, that turned out not to be the case last year. And obviously, a lot of factors that were at play last year. Obviously, not having guys like Nico Collins and Ambry Thomas really did not do wonders in inexperienced offensive line, inexperienced quarterback play. It was like, I don't know. It just seemed to be a perfect storm of bad things to happen. Is it a sign of things to come, or was it a 1 year sort of blip in the radar that we can kind of blame on COVID? That remains to be seen, but we do know that the last 5 years, they've been above average, 39-19 overall in the last 5 years. You'd like it to be better, but hey, as you go listen to the Nebraska episode, could be a whole heck of a lot worse.
Yeah, last year, let's just call a spade a spade. It was a shit show across the board, top to bottom. Defense was bad. Quarterback play was bad. Offensive line play was everything. Nothing worked. Coaching was bad. Play calling was bad. It was all a nightmare, right? So the fact that we are here now and we're hearing all the kind of similar things to what we heard last year. The culture is different. We just had the best offseason. We had the best installs of our life. Those are the kind of narratives that you hear this time of year. But by all accounts, it has been a productive offseason. I think that Michigan has changed a lot, and we'll talk about what some of those changes are and what they have been, and what kind of dive a little deeper on that. But I think things are a little more stable right now than some people may be led to believe, but it's still not. We'll get to it with the projections and the game-by-game stuff later on. It might not be enough, but we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, and we know, look, throughout the course of Jim Harbaugh's tenure, obviously you would certainly like to beat Ohio State. You'd love a better record against Michigan State. And, the bowl record speaks for itself. But 49-22, look, Michigan, you deserve better. If you're a fan and you expect more than that, I totally understand. But it has gotten better than it was, obviously, under the Brady Hoke and Rich Rod eras. But it still needs to continue to trend upward. I think that's what everyone's looking for. That's why I think last year pissed so many people off is 2019, the expectations coming in, not living up to those, coupled with just a horrendous year in 2020. It's real easy. It's a real what have you done for me lately type business. And I think last year kind of highlighted that the most.
Yeah, well, it really what's been they've been trying to find themselves since that 2018 Ohio State game. Right. Is what it is, because for a while it was, maybe 2016 Ohio State tumbled them off the path they were on, and then they struggled in 2017, and 2018 you lose to Notre Dame to start the year, but then you get it back, revenge tour, 10 wins in a row. You go into Ohio State, into Columbus as the favorite, and things went historically and irreparably, to question mark, bad. And they've been trying to figure it out since then. 2019 should have been a team that competed for a Big Ten title. They were out of the race before Halloween. 2020, I get that COVID happened, but operationally, it not only was it bad, it was putrid. And there was all the chest thumping about, we're going to be the team that leads the way and sets the bar for how COVID teams handle COVID. And then again, this isn't their fault, but a COVID outbreak kind of takes away your last 2 or 3 games of the year. So everything top to bottom after that first week at Minnesota just kind of, it tumbled out of control, and it necessitated change. I was of the opinion, I think that we were pretty upfront with the not expectation, that's not the right word, but we think we saw enough of the Jim Harbaugh era. But he's back. That's over. That's done with. He signed the extension, and he changed just about everything. Yes. Obviously, overhauled the defense. Offensively, operationally changed a few things here and there, but not a ton has changed there. Maybe just stability is what's best for them. But even behind the scenes, recruiting department, overhauled, changed. Some of the support staff, like the Sydney Sims hires, the Christina DeRuyter hires, those people behind the scenes, analysts, things like that. Like there was not really a stone that was left unturned. And, I think when you've looked at Jim Harbaugh speak so far, that he just personally, physically, he looks healthier, but there's more of a pep in his step. And really I think everyone was just it was one of those burn the tape seasons. You just kind of have to go back to square one, start from scratch, and figure out what your identity is. And the fact that they've had full spring football to this point, they've had a full and seemingly productive fall camp. So maybe a return to normalcy. We'll determine here what a return to normalcy looks like for this program. But at least this year, when we're looking at state of the program, they have to win football games. Don't get me wrong. But it does feel like things are a little more stable, and maybe there's not, like, they're putting pressure on themselves to win. But I don't know. It just feels like a lot of the changes they made were changes you see what happens 2 years down the road instead of, we look at December, where are things at? So,
well, we have to, go back to 2008 to kind of talk about the state of the coaching staff here, because, that 2018 Ohio State game, that set things in motion. It set kind of a domino effect for the program to where they got rid of the offense that they were running for, the first 4 seasons under Jim Harbaugh. They bring in Josh Gaddis, speed and space, coming over from Alabama. And to this point, I mean, it's kind of generous to say it's been a mixed bag of results. He's averaging about 30 points per game as the offensive coordinator and play caller in his 2 seasons, about 31 points a game in 2019, down to 28 a year ago. But their yards per play actually improved last year compared to 2019. But the offense hasn't seemed to really be that big of an improvement over. It's a different style, but the results haven't really been a huge improvement over what was here when Harbaugh was kind of running the offense.
Well, it took them half a season to get going in 2019. And this is, I guess, where maybe we start the Josh Gaddis conversation. It took them half the year to get going in 2019. And really a little bit too late. They start to get going in the second half of that Penn State game after falling down, whatever it was, a couple scores, which was kind of been their MO. And when you fast forward to 2020, like the defense was bad and schematically there were flaws. And then the talent that was on that defense was not good enough either. So I'm not making excuses for them when I say what I am about to say. When you come out and you go 3-and-out interception, the first 3 drives of your game on offense, your defense is already not good enough, and you're just putting them in a hole that compounds everything. Now, talent-wise, was this one of a lower third defense in all of college football last year? Talent-wise, I don't think so. But I think what compounded a lot of the issues that they had is that this offense hasn't been able to move the ball. Yeah. And I know the easiest thing people say is, oh, well, Michigan hasn't had a star quarterback yet. Last year, the starting offensive line, at least in the lead up to the season, barely played together. They were splitting the squads so that if someone on that unit got COVID, it wouldn't wipe out the entirety of the offensive line. So a lot of times, at least early on in the year, it may have changed as the year went on. But a lot of times when they would suit up and go out there, like those guys on Saturday, that would be the first time they've played with each other all week. And then injuries happened, and there was inconsistent play. The quarterback play was not good enough. There was injuries there, but I don't think that Joe Milton was playing that well before he got hurt outside of the Minnesota game. Offense or the wide receivers, those guys, a lot of those play designs, you watch the film, you look at the end of the play, you have 3 guys standing right next to each other. So I don't know if the play designs, the play calling is what it needs to be either, or what it, last year, what it needed to be. And then one of the famous Michigan Twitter bits is the running backs and not sticking with the hot hand. Hassan Haskins rushing for 60 yards on a drive and not seeing the field for another quarter and a half, like that type of stuff. That's where I say, operationally speaking, it was all a disaster last year.
Yeah. There's not a whole lot of silver linings from last year. Like I like to burn the tape reference out of that. As you mentioned, 66th in scoring a year ago, 78th in total offense. There was too much talent, and I understand the offensive line play is certainly a big problem, but it's not like they were rolling with walk-ons at quarterback, So there's an argument to be made there. Like, what are you doing as a coaching staff to develop and get these guys ready for game days and to put them in a position to succeed? Because it's been very hit or miss over the years, and it's not like they have scrub talent at quarterback. I mean, eventually it needs to click. Sound like that might be happening here this year. Everyone seems to be really high on Kade Mcnamara.
Yeah, I think that I don't know if Kade Mcnamara has been, we haven't heard the stuff like, oh, well, he's a combination of Baker Mayfield and Pat Mahomes, and
we haven't done the Heisman edits yet,
and Lamar Jackson, and all you squeeze it all into one quarterback, and that's what they have. We haven't heard that. I think that the leadership and the way he's taken control has been strong, and something that he hasn't ceded the job at all since spring football. It was weird. A couple weeks ago, I saw, it wasn't even that long ago, maybe a week or so ago, I saw, and this isn't taking shots at anyone else, but I saw articles about, Michigan names starting quarterback, or Kade Mcnamara leads in starting quarterback battle. It's like, where have you been?
Been that way since the spring.
It's been that way since the second half of the Rutgers game last year. So I think what he gives you is pretty much what you saw during the Rutgers game. It's steady. We shouldn't be as impressed as we are by making the appropriate read, just making the appropriate throw. But that's what he does well. He's poised. I don't know if he's got this rocket arm. I don't know if you're going to see a ton of the deep ball. Again, this is going to be kind of a West Coast passing attack. You look at what's on this roster. Like, they're going, if the offensive line holds up, they are going to run the football because they should. The running backs are their best position group. Spoiler alert. And, Kade Mcnamara, I think he can give you kind of that steady type of Jake Rudock Wilton Spate type of play. The stuff where if everything else is complementary around him, you could win 9 to 10 games. But I don't know if they're quite good enough to maybe reach that high of a level. But Kade McNamara, I think my prediction for him is that if anything, he's going to come in and be efficient, if maybe unspectacular, as opposed to the floor and the wheels completely falling off like maybe it did for a guy like Milton, or at times, I say at times, with Shea Patterson. And then obviously John O'Korn being what he was before that. So I think that you're going to get some good steady quarterback play, but I don't think that it's going to be something that's, we're talking even at the end of September. We love to do the September Heisman thing. I don't think we're going to be hyping Kade McNamara up as the September Heisman this year, but I think he'll be fine. I think he'll be okay.
I mean, completed just over 60% passes a year ago, 5 touchdown interceptions. You can absolutely live with that over the course of the season. Those numbers hold up. Like you said, takes care of the football, makes the right reads. He might not be the superstar, though that also remains to be seen, right? Like, I guess we can't write that off. He's still a 4-star talent, and now he's got a little more chemistry with a lot of these guys coming back that we'll get into here in the show. But maybe with a more experienced offensive line, some receivers that are a little more comfortable in the system. Yeah, you never know what kind of numbers he could put up here. But on the flip side of the football, sticking with the state of the coaching staff here, obviously Don Brown, no longer here, had been the defensive coordinator since 2016. The thing kind of ran its course on that front. They bring in Mike Mcdonald coming over from the Ravens. John Harbaugh pretty much told his brother that he was on track to be the next defensive coordinator, it sounds like, in Baltimore, but wanted to give him a shot because he still loves Michigan football, does John Harbaugh. Apparently, that's the story that's out there.
That's the spin, right?
That's the spin. So Mike Mcdonald, we just don't know much. It sounds like it's going to be maybe kind of a 3-4 base sort of thing. Some standing guys like Aiden Hutchinson going to be playing kind of that TJ Watt sort of role. I'm very interested to see this defense because, look, man, we're going to get into the players. I think there's a lot of talent on this side of the football.
Yeah, the defense, again, it doesn't lack talent. I think there's a question mark next to a lot of these guys. Like,
yeah,
you could have,
you can have 2 5-stars out there, right? Chris Hinton and Dax Hill.
I mean, yeah, 2 5-star guys, but let's just go like level by level. Defensive line, Donovan Jeter, that's been a guy who's had the quote unquote best off season of his career for what seems like 3 off seasons in a row at least. That's a guy they're going to count on. And the defensive line is pretty cut and dry. Like, it's going to be Donovan Jeter, Mazi Smith, Chris Hinton, because there's not really a ton of depth behind them, which is kind of scary if they're going to lose.
All very regarded, though, like coming out of high school.
Very regarded, but haven't, like, Donovan Jeter, I think I kind of know what he is. He'll play well, and then he'll kind of disappear. Mazi Smith and Chris Hinton, those are the 2 guys where, like, it's year 3 for you. You were both well-regarded recruits. Chris Hinton was a 5-star. You guys kind of have to pop this year. One of you has to pop. And then, if they do, maybe one of them goes, if they both pop, maybe they both go to the NFL. But so I think that, like, there's a lot of volatility there because they could be unspectacular and then that's not a strength, or all 3 of those guys, the light could come on and all of a sudden you've got as good a 3-man front as anyone in the conference. So
right.
That's the position group I probably have the most question marks about. If you move to the outside linebackers, Aiden Hutchinson, David Ojabo, Taylor Upshaw, those are kind of going to be the 3 guys that they're either going to rush the passer standing up or in certain, because they want to be multiple in their fronts. It's not all going to be 3-4, but you'll see them, come up and put their hand in the dirt. You switch to an even man front. So I think those guys can kind of do all of that. I like that grouping. I think Aiden Hutchinson's a guy who could very easily be Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. Inside linebacker is where I have a few more questions there, but one of them seems to be sort of answered. We go into camp, like Josh Ross, I think he's going to be a captain. He's going to start at inside linebacker. And it was kind of assumed that Mike Barrett would move from Viper into that inside spot next to him, but seems like Nakai Hill-Green, who's a younger guy, I believe he's a sophomore, definitely an underclassman guy, has kind of come on, and it seems like he's taken control of that second inside linebacker job. So hopefully that's because he's having a good camp and not because Mike Barrett hasn't played well. But
Right.
I think Mike Barrett's a good football player too. And you throw Junior Colson in that mix, all of a sudden you got a couple young, there's a nice little mixture of veterans and young guys that might kind of have a future. But again, it's similar to the defensive line in that it could go either way. Those guys could be great, or it could just be unspectacular. And that's a group you have questions about.
Yeah, you got to hope, like, just for depth purposes, a guy like Junior Colson can come in right away, kind of make an impact like Devin Bush. And I know even someone like Cam McGrone, obviously, when he kind of broke out, he was a redshirt freshman. Being a true freshman's a little bit different in Junior's case. But, I mean, you're going to have depth at that position, especially when you got multiple guys out there playing that position. But I feel like they've always, had good enough linebackers. Obviously, Devin Bush was maybe the best in the country at the position. So I hope, I try not to kind of grade it based on that, knowing like kind of what an anomaly Devin Bush was. But I mean, who knows what kind of guy Junior Colson could be right away. And then you move on to the secondary. It was bad last year. It was bad last year. It was bad. But, Jamon Green, Vincent Gray, they started to – I feel like they started to play a little bit better down the second half of last year.
It was all relative. Like, they improved.
Right, yeah, right.
Everyone else was so bad that it was – yeah, I look at the defense, and cornerback by far to me is kind of, I think, my biggest concern.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not as much worried about – I think Jamon Green could be like a good number 2, but – Vincent Gray's in a battle with DJ Turner. I mean, I don't know. I think to me, it kind of seems like maybe Turner might have a leg up in that job. But, you've got guys on that depth chart like Darian Green-Warren, Andre Selden, young guys from last year that didn't play, freshman to sophomore year in a position group that needs bodies. I need to see something from those guys this year. And they have a chance to play. So safety, again, Daxton Hill, it seems like they stopped the bleeding on the back end last year when they switched him over to he would play cornerback at times. I think they're going to kind of use him in a similar way as a chess piece, playing the free safety role, probably sliding in and playing some nickel. I think that guy wants to go to the NFL after this year. So
I mean, yeah, I think that was always the plan probably for a guy like that.
Yeah, and Mike Mcdonald is a guy similar to, he's got these guys like Aiden Hutchinson and Daxton Hill. I think he's like I think he knows what he has there, and he'll use those guys as chess pieces. So that safety duo of Hill and Brad Hawkins, I don't hate that. And I actually, I think that someone like Makari Page could come in and be a pretty good player in time as well. It takes time for defensive backs too.
And like you said, if he's able to, if Makari Page is able to come in and play safety, if you absolutely need to, kind of like they did last year, let Dax play a little corner as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives you a little bit more versatility there. But when we talk about the defense as a whole, and it's what I like about McDonald, and we don't know a damn thing about him, right?
Nothing.
Like, it's
really hard. He's never called plays before.
No, I mean, this could very easily be, the Doug Nussmeier, but like on the defensive side of the ball. Except, Nussmeier had where it's like a last stand. You make this new hire to turn around an ailing part of your football.
Doug Nussmeier got the job because he, was the offensive coordinator for the best offensive line by a mile in the country.
Yeah, so that's not a good comparison. So just pretend we didn't hear that. But it's kind of is it too, like I said, I think a lot of what has been Jim Harbaugh's issue with, I think it's kind of played up a little more than it needs to be, that he doesn't get with the times and that the game has passed him by. He's made a lot of changes to the program. The problem is a lot of times it happens 1 year too late. Michigan should have changed offenses when they brought in Shea Patterson, and then maybe he struggled in 2018, and then you explode that next season. You can make the argument that Don Brown,
but even so, that 2018 squad, that was really that defense that, the revenge tour was mostly defense. Even if that offense struggles with him in a transition year, I still think they do very good, and maybe the game goes a little bit different.
But you get what I'm going for, right? Like, it's
for sure, 100%. Yeah, it's a year. It always does seem to be a year too late.
You wait a year too long to replace Pep Hamilton. You wait what I think is probably a year too long. If last year, like, no one knew what last year was going to be, but if last year was going to wind up being a rebuilding year for the defense, again, you should have changed defenses last year, and then you have a leg up. Like, I realize that's easy to say in hindsight, but there have been more than a few times where, I mean, the Tim Drevno thing was probably another example where just it was a little kind of too little, too late for all that. So we'll see. We kind of skipped over the running backs and the wide receivers. So maybe
I was gonna make my way back to the offense at a certain point. That was the state of the coaching staff ended up going into the state of the entire defense because we don't really know enough about Mike Mcdonald. Quick,
that's the storyline too, is that we don't know anything about this coaching staff.
Right.
Sean Nua, good guy, and he's loved by the players, but the development on the defensive line has been lacking. I think even they would tell you that. But I know nothing about George Hilo. I know Steve Klinkscale, I think, wound up being a good hire for them in a roundabout way. They tried to get him the first time around. They get Maurice Linguist. Linguist takes the Buffalo job, and they get Klinkscale anyways. That's the one guy where I think that I'm pretty confident on how that will go. But
yeah,
Ron Bellamy has been a high school coach for the last 11 years. He's coaching safeties. Mike Mcdonald, I mean, you can throw some cachet into what John Harbaugh says about, this is going to be a guy who eventually takes over for Wink Martindale. But other than that, we know nothing about that coaching staff. I think we know a little bit more on the offensive side.
Yeah, you brought up the running backs, man, and I'm excited to see how it plays out with Mike Hart. I think this has been a long time coming to bring him back in the building, and I'll tell you what, he's got a heck of a running back room to work with to kick it off, I think.
Yeah, and we kind of hit on this a little bit earlier, but the running back situation and the feel because I don't think people realize this. I think when you see who goes on the field, they're like, oh, well, that's Harbaugh throwing this guy on the field. That's Josh Gaddis throwing him out there. Position coaches are the guys that grab you by the face mask and throw you onto the field. So am I going to sit here and say that Jay Harbaugh was in over his head? No, because that might be mean. But I think they upgraded at running backs coach. Yes. I think even they would tell you that. So obviously, like he was Tom Allen's associate head coach at Indiana.
Right.
Like there's a bright future for Mike Hart, and it's not just a Michigan man thing either. He is qualified. He has a track record, and he's got. I know down the road at Ohio State, they're always going to be more loaded. But aside from Ohio State, who has a more loaded running back room in the Big Ten than Hassan Haskins, than Blake Corum, than a fringe 5-star guy in Donovan Edwards, even Tavier Dunlap, I think you're going to see get some run this year. So
I think there's an argument to be made. Michigan could have the best running back room in the Big Ten, to be honest with you, because, Ohio State, it sounds obviously Master Teague is coming back and they're really high on that freshman they got there. I'm blanking on his name right now. But other than that, man, I mean, Hassan Haskins has been outstanding. Is he been under the radar fantastic the last couple of years? Like, I feel like he doesn't get a lot of love.
Yeah, kind of, because he runs for 50 yards on a drive, and then you don't see him until the second half.
I mean, he averaged 6 yards a carry and had 6 touchdowns last year.
Yeah, no, he's good. He is as advertised. And is he a guy that's going to catch the ball out of the backfield? Is he a guy that's going to bust a 50-yard run? No, but you know what? I think he's going to put his shoulder down and get you some tough yards and be kind of that running back, like the running back that Michigan fans always kind of yearn for, the guy who can get you 4 yards, who can get you a tough yard when you need it. And then you throw the other guys in there with Blake Corum, who I believe this was Steven Ostentowski who said this, but if he was an inch or two taller, that guy's probably a 5-star. The skill, right. He's walking around.
Did you see how much? I was just going to say, have you seen him, man? That picture of him? Oh my God. How do you tackle that? How do you tackle a guy with legs that look like that?
I don't know. He's literally walking around campus looking like the Thing from the Fantastic Four, which is, hey, that's great to see. But then Donovan Edwards, someone who, like, I think it's going to kind of be Haskins and Corum are like 1A and 1B, and that's where you find the hot hand thing. And then Donovan Edwards comes in, and he's your third down back. And the best thing about him is that he's kind of a hybrid. He's a hybrid.
He gets the return. Like, I hope he gets put on kick and punt returns quite a bit, because I think he could be electric there too.
Well, potentially, but I think he's kind of the best of both worlds, where he's got the power and the physique. Like, if you watched him play at West Bloomfield, he looked like a college-ready back as a sophomore in high school. So
that state championship game didn't even look fair, man.
No. So he brings you the power. He brings you the speed. He brings you the pass catching ability. And who knows? Like, there's a scenario in play where he could pop and wind up being the guy. But I there's solace in knowing that I think that the guy at the helm of the position group will get it right in terms of who needs to be out there, who needs to be. I think the days of the bell cow back in college football are kind of, I don't say passed us by, but those guys are kind of unicorns now. Even the star guys at Alabama, like Najee Harris was still sharing carries with other guys at Alabama. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and that's not to say Michigan has that type of room, but there's enough to go around, and I think they have a position coach that will put them in positions to succeed there.
I apologize. I saw Shane Costigan's YouTube comment here. Corum ate Charbonnet and absorbed his powers.
Yeah, he's like Kirby from the Nintendo games. So.
That is, yeah, man. I don't know what that whole situation was last year with Zach Charbonnet, or that was the weirdest, one of the biggest mysteries, I feel like, that we'll have forever as Michigan football fans is what in the world went on with Zach Charbonnet in 2020.
I don't know if we'll ever know. And now you've got, a guy like Chris Evans comes back last year too and doesn't do much, but then the Cincinnati Bengals take him in, I think, the 5th or 6th round, and he might be the number 2 running back to Joe Mixon now. So, yeah. Wide receivers.
This is another one where it's like we know who probably the top 3 guys are, and then it's a bunch of guys who got a lot of talent. And, where do you fit them? Obviously, top 2, Ronnie Bell, Cornelius Johnson. These guys are should be pretty good. Ronnie Bell, as the number 1 last year, obviously didn't quite produce up to expectations like what we thought. We'll see if this year is a little bit different, knowing that, and hopefully him having an ability to adjust. But he did average about 15.1 yards per catch, and he did score a touchdown. Cornelius Johnson came on strong. He had 3 touchdowns on the year. So those guys coming back, obviously very talented. Also, I'm very, very curious about how they're going to use a guy like Dalen Baldwin coming in. How much is he going to get? He's big. He's fast. He put up huge numbers. He's a guy who I feel like could make a push too.
Yeah, and I don't know that we know who their best 3 are. Now, I know if I were to pick a 3 based on what we saw last year, it would probably be Ronnie Bell, Cornelius Johnson, and Roman Wilson. But like Sainer still is a guy who they like and that has shown some things. You just talked about Dalen Baldwin, someone who I think he's someone who kind of comes in like he's going to play on the outside. Like he's got the size, he's got the speed. At the very least, he's someone who comes in for Cornelius Johnson. But then maybe you have those 2 guys on each side of the field and you're playing 500 dead or alive and you chuck it and hope they make a play. But AJ Henning, for as much there was a lot kind of made about Giles Jackson leaving, but to me, it's just like, okay, well, it just means it's AJ Henning time now. 2 guys that I think do a lot of the same thing. And Giles Jackson, interestingly enough, will be in Ann Arbor in week 2 as he plays for Washington now.
Yep.
But I don't know if this will be the year for guys like Christian Dixon and Andrel Anthony, but I think you've got a pretty good group of 6 with Bell, with Johnson, with Sainer still, Baldwin, Roman Wilson, AJ Henning. Like there's no excuse not to have like at least an efficient passing game. Like if you're going to do the West Coast thing where you're dinking and dunking and speed and space and you want these guys with the ball in their hands getting upfield, there's a lot to like here. There's a lot to like here.
But like you said, it's Gaddis putting them in the position to succeed, and we just haven't seen it a whole lot out of it. Yeah. I don't know. I really don't know what the speed and space is quite yet, Yeah,
year 3. Yeah, it's not speed and space anymore. It's PSP. It's physical, precise, and what was the other one? What does the S stand for? Smart. I don't know. Something like that.
It's probably not good when you got to change your whole model like a couple years in.
Well, I'm not into the whole mottos thing anyways.
Adapt, I guess.
I'll say this. If they play Western Michigan and I see AJ Henning and Cornelius Johnson and Ronnie Bell at the end of a play, basically having tea with each other at the standing on the 30-yard line marker, I'm probably going to hurl a desk chair through the press box window. So they need to be a little more creative there. So Yeah, I like the group, but again, it's on paper. Like this has been the quintessential on paper offense for the last, going on 3 years now. Like there's no excuse that in 2019 you have guys like Donovan Peoples-Jones and Nico Collins and Tariq Black, and we know I'm not going to go into this old bit here, but it's been an on paper offense for the last couple of years, and there's just been so much potential left on the table, and whether that be to it be penalties, whether it be injuries, whether you can't pinpoint one thing, but you don't just slap a Band-Aid on it and fix it. It's got to start at the top, and it's got to start in how you work, how you prepare, how you practice, because I think a lot of Michigan's issues have been Monday through Thursday problems as opposed to Saturday afternoon problems, if you know what I'm saying.
Right.
So,
yeah, well, coupled with a lot of Saturday problems as well, untimely penalties and, things like that. But yeah, this is obviously a huge year for both Harbaugh and Gaddis, like it's got to click this year or it's never going to click, and you've got a lot of talent waiting in the wing, so you got to be able to utilize it here this year. But obviously, offensive line is probably the biggest question mark I have on offense because, you lose Zach Carpenter going over to Indiana, played a few games, for at center for the Wolverines last year. Sounds like they're moving Andrew Vestardis over there to center.
Andrew Vestardis, who played center, I think maybe 2 or 3 games last year, got injured, but didn't really play well. But apparently that had something to do with injury as well. So far, it looks like he might kind of lead at center. He's in a battle. Him and Zach Zinter are kind of the two guys at center. Like, here's the fascinating thing about their offensive line. Ryan Hayes, more or less, unless there's an injury, locked in at left tackle. Andrew Stuber, he's going to play somewhere, whether it be at right tackle or right guard. Zach Zinter is going to play somewhere. And there are people, they've been pretty upfront about this. They think that Zach Zinter might be their best overall offensive player, which, talking about the names that we just talked about, and then bringing up Zach Zinter as your best offensive player, I hope that means that he's doing very well and that everyone else isn't, going down. But Zinter's a guy, again, there's a lot of fluidity here. Chuck Filiaga and Trevor Keegan are in a battle for a left guard job. So I think even heading into, I think as we record this, maybe 10 days or so away, 11 days from game day, I think they're still kind of figuring out who that top 5 is as well. So Hayes is in, Stuber is in, Zinter is in, but where 2 of those guys are and who the other 2 guys are is still up for grabs. So I would say that you're probably looking like, if I were setting the lineup, and I'm not, because I'm a dummy and I'm a blogger and I'm not a football coach, you've got Ryan Hayes, you've got Trevor Keegan, you've got Zach Zinter like playing center, you've got Stuber at guard, and then you've got someone like Carson Barnhart playing right tackle. But I think they like Stuber better a little bit at tackle, and I think that he might be a little bit better there, at least comfort-wise. So, but it's really appealing to me that in a scenario where, let's just say the middle of your defense is Keegan and Zinter, or I'm sorry, your offensive line is Keegan and Zinter and Andrew Stuber. Like, those are all guys that stand like 6'6", 6'7", 230, 240. Or I'm sorry, 330 or 340. So the fact that you might have the potential for that much beef up front, and we talk about being physical and precise and wanting to run the football, because the offense is going to probably revolve around how good they are running the football. That's a scenario that's kind of appealing to me.
Yeah, and that's going to be, it's going to be the key. You can't have a good offense without a good offensive line, and we know this, obviously. Last year was bad up front, and it needs to be a whole heck of a lot better, because we can talk all we want about the wide receivers, being talented, Mike Hart coming back, running the running back room with some good talented running backs, but ain't going to matter without, an offensive line that's pretty solid.
Yeah, and I'll bring this comment up here too. Steve Sherrick says, so it's a practice and preparation issue because they just overhauled 2/3 of their coaching staff and operationally changed a lot of the things they just did. So their actions, plus talking about a culture change and all that, like their actions suggest that. I'm not. That's not me pulling stuff out of the air. Like that's kind of been what it's been. So just think about the media sessions where they talk about how, we have great practices, and for whatever reason, it's not translating to Saturday. You've heard players say that. Coaches have said that. So again, that goes back to operationally speaking, everything needs to be better. So, but we can't just do a show that says, Michigan preview projections. Michigan needs to be better in everything. Okay. You can follow us on Twitter and then just close it out. You know what I mean?
I guess Christopher Sarton would like if we did that. You know, we'll just
there's a little bit of an edge in the YouTube comments tonight, but keep them coming and stuff. But hey, it is what it is. And Steve says back, but your complaint was about Gaddis, who's still there. Yeah, because I don't think you could afford to change offenses and both sides of the ball. Because if you're changing both coordinators, why is the head coach still there? And I think that Gaddis, we've seen like when the Gaddis offense works, though they're attacking the edges, the play calling is creative. Gaddis can kind of get into a groove too with his play calling, things like that. But last year was just such a bottoming out that I think a lot of the things that happened offensively, you can kind of chalk up to COVID year. Defensively, I don't think that was the case. I think that was kind of a couple years building up to that. So I don't know.
All right, let's take a look at the schedule. It's an interesting schedule here. It's kicking off with Western Michigan, obviously at home, September 4th, Labor Day weekend. A Western Michigan team who a lot of people think is going to do very well in the MAC here this year. But, I mean, this is I don't want to say it's a good litmus test for Michigan, but it is a litmus test. Look, they're way more talented than Western Michigan at the end of the day. If this is 2014 UConn, where you win, but it's an absolute, just sludge around and don't really do anything the whole game. Michigan's in for a long season, you know. But if they take care of business, I'm not going to say it's a sign for great things to come, because they should take care of business without much issue. But you can kind of say, okay, Michigan is probably at where we think they might be. I'm not saying, if they beat Western Michigan 56-10, they're going to go and beat Washington the next week. But I will say if they end up winning 21-17, they're probably not going to beat Washington the next week.
Yeah, this is a game that's fascinating to me in that Western Michigan, I don't know where they're going to finish in the MAC, but that's a team that can score points. And if you're a defense that is still kind of learning itself and figuring it out, and again, there is in a few areas kind of they have some talent deficient things on the roster, namely in the secondary, as these dogs next door are barking and driving me nuts. I don't know if you can hear them, but I'll leave this in anyways because I'm a professional and we'll power through it. But yeah, so if you're an offense that's still figuring out what your identity is and a defense that's still figuring out how to run your system, I could see there being some struggles there, and maybe you win. Let's just say you win 30-17 or something. But I think we're both on board here calling that a victory. So
yeah, I do. The issue with that is look, the schedule doesn't do you any favors with the Washington game. They're still gonna, I guess, be figuring stuff out technically, but it has to be as close to not going into week 2, because you're gonna have to be playing, one of your best games to beat this Washington team. I think Michigan's capable. Look, I'm much higher on Michigan than I think a lot of people are here this year, because I think there's a lot of talent. It's obviously got a lot to do with what we've talked about, the coaching changes, the day-to-day stuff that you have to do to be a winning football team. I think Michigan is perfectly talented enough to beat Washington. It's just like you said, are they going to be in full stride going into week 2?
That is the million.
It's a night game. You don't even get the advantage of Washington coming to you at noon, right? Right. You're playing this game. What I believe it's 8 or 8:30 start on that second week. So like a 5:30 start for them.
Yeah, it's an 8:00 start, so the game will be Western time. But when your game's that late in the day, I don't think that's kind of overstated. I think that actually might. You don't
get an advantage on a night game with a West Coast team coming to you. If it's a noon start, I mean,
if anything, it might be a disadvantage for Michigan because you have all day to be amped up.
100%. Because you want like the Stanford coming in over to Northwestern for that first game of the season sort of feel that at noon. That's the advantage you get playing over here, but you don't get that advantage with the night game against Washington.
Yeah. So, God, this one's tough for me, but I'm I can't forget what I saw last year, so I'm going loss for Washington, which would be disappointing, but I don't. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility either. So I'm going loss. How about
Yeah,
you?
I think they win. I think they beat Washington. You do get the home game. There's gonna be that sense of something with a night game, with the fans back and everyone. I don't know how the maze out's gonna work. Look, I
It
understand
won't
what
work. They've never worked.
I understand what a lot of the big house fan population is made up of. It probably isn't going to work, but I think there's going to be a lot of energy there. I don't know. Michigan, at home in night games, they got some miracles in back-to-back years against Notre Dame. Well, actually, then 2019 against Notre Dame, that was a night game too. Maybe it's just a Notre Dame thing that I've got a little bias here for Michigan playing well at night games. Maybe it's just a Notre Dame thing. I don't know, but I think there's going to be something. Like I said, I think they're plenty talented to hang with Washington and beat Washington. Chris Peterson not there anymore, so I do think they get that victory in week 2 as they move on to Northern Illinois. I mean, this shouldn't be a contest no matter what.
Win. Do we have to talk about it? I mean, the one thing, Rocky Lombardi will be in at quarterback. So
that's God. Imagine that. I'll have to quit this if Rocky Lombardi in a Northern Illinois uniform wins in the big house back-to-back years.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd be able to come in here and just comments, back to back with Rocky Lombardi winning another one. Then we got Rutgers. I think this is going to be an interesting game here. You and I are a little higher on Rutgers. If you go back and listen to our preview and projection one here, obviously had a heck of a time with them on the road up in Piscataway last year. But how do you like this one playing out for homecoming?
I think they'll win. Michigan is not going to lose to Rutgers at home. I would be very surprised if they lost to Rutgers at home. But maybe I shouldn't be because Rutgers took them to, 3 overtimes last year?
Yeah.
But I don't see, like, Rutgers is improved, but I just don't see a scenario where Michigan comes home. It's a homecoming game, 3:30 kickoff. I mean, if they lose to Rutgers, that'll be the second game this season where I hurl a desk chair out of the press box. So,
yeah, no, Rutgers is a win for me. I'm high on them. I think they are going to be in a few years, maybe next year in a couple of years, they're going to be a somewhat formidable foe in the East, kind of like Rutgers basketball, to be honest with you. Just kind of, a team that has maybe some expectations and they end up being pretty good. They beat a couple of teams here and there. I don't know if they ever get back to where they were when they beat Louisville, back in, 2007, maybe something like that. But I do think they get the victory over Rutgers. I've got them at 4-0. You've got them at 3-1 headed to Camp Randall. And man, I don't know about this one.
I know they've won there before, but man, oh man, that I don't see it. I think that Wisconsin. If you've listened to this series at all, Wisconsin and Minnesota would be the two teams that I think are kind of going to duke it out for the Big Ten West.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm not saying they can't win there, and they need to be competitive there. But I'm gonna, again, knowing what we know, I'm gonna call it a loss.
Yep, I'm with you 100%. That's one kind of like the last game of the season that they've got to prove to me, that they can go into Camp Randall and win, because the last couple of times have not been pretty for them rolling into Camp Randall. I guess 2017 was okay for a while. The defense kind of held up good there, but then 2019, man, that was one of the worst games I've ever watched in my life. So yeah, I've got a loss to Wisconsin, especially coming off of last year. You and I very much like Wisconsin. I think Graham Mertz is an absolute fantastic talent at the quarterback position. So, all right, I've got him at 4-1. You've got him at 3-2, and if they're 3-2 after the first 5, man, people are going to be fired up. But they do get to head to Lincoln to take on Nebraska. We get another meeting between these two teams where, we know the history of Scott Frost in Michigan dating back to 97. But the good news is last time Michigan played this team, it was not pretty for Scott Frost. And quite honestly, Jim Harbaugh kind of owns Scott Frost here,
Yeah, Jim Harbaugh's.
I mean, they outhit him. They outhit him in 2016 UCF.
Well, yeah, you can't discount that at all, can you? This is a win. I think Nebraska's going to stink. I think that program is probably going to bottom out. Anytime you talk about you have an off season where apparently Scott Frost is under investigation now for improper practice during the pandemic and all kinds of other stuff that's been going on. And plus you're talking about how the walk-on program is the backbone of what you're trying to build. No, Michigan will win that game. It won't do much to, I know people will still have a sour taste in their mouth, but it will be a little bit nice to at least beat up on Scott Frost.
Yeah, absolutely. They get that one easily. They absolutely dominate Scott Frost in Lincoln. Nebraska is going to have a tough year, I believe, here this year. Then they got a nice bye week, which is going to be timely because the back half of the schedule is 0% fun. They get to kick it off with Northwestern, Big Ten West champ a year ago, though. If you listen to our preview projection on Northwestern, we're not very high on them. I think Michigan gets a victory over Northwestern at home here this year.
I'm with you. We talked about before how Pat Fitzgerald and Northwestern are kind of the masters of good year, bad year, good year, bad year. And I just think they lost too much from last year's team. I don't know if they have enough. I think this would probably be the part of the season where we start to see this defense take some steps forward. And I just don't think Northwestern has enough offensively to go into Ann Arbor and win a football game. So I think we're calling that a win for both of us.
And then the trip to East Lansing, coming off of a disastrous 2020 game against the Spartans, looking to bring home Paul Bunyan, Mel Tucker, second year. Interesting Michigan State team. What do you think happens in East Lansing here this year?
Let's stop and talk about this one for a little bit.
All right.
Because this is a game that they cannot afford to lose, period. I don't care if they are 7-0 going into this game. I don't care if they are 4-3. I don't care if they're 0-7. You have to win this game, period. If you lose this game, like you already lost to what will probably be Mel Tucker's worst team at Michigan State, a team that was putrid last season. The highlight of their entire season is somehow beating Northwestern and beating you, and it wasn't close. They beat you. The score from last year's game was not as close as it indicated. I mean, Michigan State was up by 10 late in the fourth quarter. You have to win this game. And you have to win it. I don't know what else to say. You don't win this game. What are we doing here? Like, it's over. You lose this game, it's over. I don't care if you're undefeated. I don't care if you haven't won a game yet. You lose to Mel Tucker 2 years in a row. It is over. Period.
Yeah, it seals, no matter what, it seals Jim Harbaugh's fate. No question about it.
And when we talk about Jim Harbaugh and like everyone in the conference has an Ohio State problem.
Right.
But Michigan should not have a Michigan State problem, a Penn State problem, a Wisconsin problem. These are the types of games you have to win. And you've already lost one this year in this projection. We're both saying they're losing at Wisconsin. If you lose at Michigan State, fire everyone now. Period. So, because I don't want to do that show in late October, because this is, almost a year to the day, October 30th, I do think Michigan will win this game. I don't think that Michigan State will be very good defensively, and I think offensively they'll be improved, but I think Michigan will be better on both sides of the ball, and they'll win a close game.
Yeah. I think they beat Michigan State. Look, I like what Mel Tucker's building there. I respect it, but Michigan just has much more talent. I think they're going to be fired up here this year compared to, going on what happened last year. I think they didn't prepare well for that Michigan State game. I think they're going to this year. I think Michigan should beat Michigan State. Michigan is going to beat Michigan State and take home Mr. Bunyan here this year. I also love real quick, can we talk about who is Sammy Kahn here? Appreciate you, Sammy. As me and Anthony picked one game different, and I'm drinking the Big Blue Kool-Aid, man. Some of you people are crazy. It is wild. So going on to Indiana, at home, a very good Indiana team, bringing back a ton last year, and Tom Allen's got them guys playing some football down at Bloomington, Anthony.
He does, as he's been described by several. They're calling him the Ted Lasso of college football. I don't think that is the case, because I think I like Tom Allen. So let me preface this by saying that. But he's not quite as wholesome, and his team is kind of dirtbaggy, right? We've seen them go after the knees of guys and things like that. Chase Winovich in that Indiana game a couple of years ago, the week before Ohio State. Yeah, I want to hear what you have to say before I say what my prediction is.
I told you, I think this is one of those, this is a year for Indiana that I think is kind of a letdown for them. They have a ton of expectations. They've really never had expectations like this coming into a season. They're at their best, and they have been as kind of that yippy dog that's biting at the heels sort of thing. And
like
then
the dog's barking next door.
Last year they got grown. Last year, that dog got big, and they won some big games, obviously beating Penn State, beating Michigan, playing a very good game against Ohio State. Indiana was very good last year. I think the expectations get to them this year. I think Michigan wins in a very, like a 2017 sort of victory here, similar to what we've seen in the past many years against Indiana. But I do think that they're able to get a very close victory against the Hoosiers this year.
Okay. I will also predict them to win, because Michigan had won, I think, what was it, 25 or 26 in a row against these guys.
Yep.
My questions with Indiana are, one, they're not going to sneak up on anyone now.
Right.
And two, is Michael Penix going to be healthy by the time these two teams play? And those are, I think, maybe my two biggest questions about them this year. But I think that being a home game for Michigan, again, I do think this year being somewhat of a return to competency at home. They hadn't won.
Right.
Last year was the first time they'd never won a home game during a obviously asterisk COVID season. We get that, but
I think they've been very good at home under Jim Harbaugh. With fans.
I think they get the job done. I think Indiana kind of takes a little bit of a step back. I'm seeing like a 7-5 year for them. So, I'm going to go with Michigan in that game.
All right, let's roll into Happy Valley. As, my God, man, you're at Michigan State, home to Indiana, then at Penn State for a 3-game stretch. That is rough. That is absolutely rough. So this probably won't be. I think Penn State's doing the whiteout against Auburn this year, I believe I heard. So this won't be that. This will probably be, one of those 3:30 start times as they roll into Happy Valley. What are your thoughts on this one, man? Because these are two programs that I feel like are in the same boat. I guess I do want to talk about Penn State here. Why? For those of you that are, completely out on Michigan, and there's a lot of you in the comments right now that are just not sold on Michigan's ability to win games, but I'm sure a lot of you are, thinking Penn State, is going to be a bounce back year, no problem. If you're not, I apologize. I didn't mean to generalize you, but a lot of people are like that. Everyone is like, I think Stuart Mandel, I saw his predictions here today, like Penn State's going to have a bounce back year. He had Michigan at 3-6 in the conference. What is the big difference between Penn State and Michigan coming into this year?
That James Franklin has beat Ohio State before.
Yes, a fluky win in 2016. That's literally the entire narrative shift for James Franklin.
Yeah, I think my question's about this game. Do you have a prediction for this?
I do. I actually think Michigan loses a close one, just because playing at Happy Valley is very difficult.
You're taking a flamethrower to Penn State, and you're like, actually, I think Michigan.
No, I'm saying, I think, like, I have Michigan with one loss up to this point, and I think Penn State does have a bounce back season. But I think Michigan has a bounce back season too. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think Michigan is just going to stay down here while Penn State's like, oh yeah, we're right back, no problem.
Yeah, I'm going loss too, and it's less about Penn State and more about I don't trust this team going on the road to play anyone.
Right, exactly.
Especially with the questions that they have. So, whiteout or not, night game or not, until I see otherwise, and again, all of these are just, it's conjecture and projections. I get that. Someone will say that I'm being too kind with 7-3. Someone will say you're not being kind enough with 8-2. That's how these things go. But knowing what we do, I can only go by the information that's made available to us. I don't trust this team going on the road right now. So to me, it's
I'm with you 100%. That's why I can't pick them going to Camp Randall either. Yeah. You know, they can beat Nebraska and Michigan State on the road. Just going on the road against top 25 teams has just not been Jim Harbaugh's thing, and right. Winning, you know, and that's a conversation of why a lot of people want him gone. And I'm here to listen to that, but we're just picking games right now. So I've got him with 2 losses headed into Maryland. You've got him with 3. But I'm not as big on this Maryland team as a lot of people seem to be. I don't think they're going to be that good. I don't trust Mike Locksley. He's got a horrendous record as a head coach. We go over that in very good detail for you in our Maryland preview and projections pod. And I think Michigan wins by 2 to 3 scores in this one.
Yeah, they're going to beat the shit out of Maryland. That's my prediction. I think Maryland is very extremely overrated. I shouldn't say they're going to blow out Maryland. That's too presumptive, but they will win. They will beat Maryland. Maryland it's a Mike Locksley thing right now. We've talked about there's the Dan Enos effect. And also there is a revenge game thing in play in terms of, you know, there's some bad blood between Mike Locksley and Josh Gaddis. Michigan kind of swooped Gaddis away from them at the last second there. And I mean, Michigan has still won more football games than Maryland has. So I'm not exactly sure what the beef is. It's still a better job, but I like what Michigan has. Maybe not like Tua's brother, Talia Tagovailoa. He could be a star. Raheem Jarrett. They have some good playmakers really on both sides of the ball, but I just don't think they have enough. And their head coach's record is what it is. This isn't Mel Tucker where he's just had one bad year and you go from there. Mike Locksley is like 8-40, something like that, right?
I gotta pull it up real quick right now because it is horrendously bad. Mike Locksley as a head coach is 8-43.
Oh, so I was being kind to him.
8-43 as a head coach.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I feel about that. And yeah, I should say this too, because we'll wait till the end. Keep going. We have another game to do still. So
all right. We got the game. Ohio State coming to the big house. Or wait. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I forgot last year didn't happen.
That's right. Yeah. How about that? Ohio State.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
What do I say about this one, Anthony? I'll put this out there. I think Michigan, for some strange reason, maybe they have a better chance to beat Ohio State this year than they would have last year. I don't know if that's saying a whole lot.
Yeah, because this year they won't be starting traffic cones at quarterback. I mean, Mike Barrett won't be running out of the Wildcat. Like that's.
I mean, that's all I can say about it. Look, until I see it happen, I'm not ever.
Can we just let's say it right now so I can put the graphic up. No, They're not going to beat Ohio State. But to me, I think the conversation becomes, what is an acceptable, because everyone says in order for Jim Harbaugh to keep his job, he's got to beat Ohio State. Michigan's got to find a way to beat Ohio State. But that's like saying, in order for, I don't know, I need $1 million to fall out of the sky into my lap. It's the chances of that happening are not very high. So,
if Michigan played Ohio State in week 3, I could potentially talk myself into it with Ohio State and the question marks on defense, CJ Stroud, whatever. By November 27th, we know what Ohio State's going to be. CJ Stroud's probably going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country, whatever, So until I physically see it happen, I will not pick Michigan to beat Ohio State.
No, but let me ask you this, because it's not interesting for us to just sit here and say, oh, they're not going to beat Ohio State. What does an acceptable loss to Ohio State look like?
You absolutely have to be competitive with them, right? Especially this year,
because they're probably going to win the Big Ten. There's a good chance they still go undefeated. Is competitive keeping it within 2 scores? Is it keeping it within a score, a field goal? What is it?
So 2019 was like competitive. We all know that, right? Like, was it Hassan Haskins who completely missed a wide open hole on 4th down?
Yeah.
Could have ran for a touchdown to cut it to a
Both
one-score
of
game
2018
early in
and
the fourth quarter.
2018 and 2019 were competitive. They spiraled out of control late, and it was shotgun blast to the foot on Michigan's end. And that's not to say, like, Ohio State, they don't make mistakes, but they will pounce on every single mistake you make. And people forget that. I think it was maybe an 8. Like, it was close within the last couple minutes of the third quarter of the 2018 game, and I think it was maybe a 15-point game early in the fourth quarter.
It was 15 points early in the fourth quarter. I believe it was Haskins. I could be wrong, but they ran that damn wildcat.
Yep.
Yeah, and
he cuts right instead of left.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. It's a wide open hole. He runs for a touchdown. They cut it to a score. Like, I don't care, Christopher Sarton, you can pretend it wasn't competitive, but it was, I guess that qualifies as competitive, right? Like, I'd love to say, the final score, I'd love to say 2016, 2017.
The final score is what it is. Like, when you lose by several touchdowns, like, somewhere along the line, you got your ass beat. You didn't play well enough.
Right.
It's so, like, even if they lose close, it's going to be because they did something stupid and shot themselves in the foot somewhere.
Like Khaleke Hudson jumping off sides when they're about to punt from midfield and they end up scoring a touchdown on the drive.
Yeah. It's everyone that says, like,
untie J.K. Dobbins' shoes.
Yeah. Jim Harbaugh has to beat Ohio State this year or else he loses his job. Like, that's like, my mom's saying, you need to get married within the next, 6 months, and it has to be Margot Robbie that you bring home with you. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to happen. I'm not self-deprecating. I'm not, she's, whatever. That's neither here nor there. But you're creating an unfair, like, to me, it all depends on what it looks like. So that becomes the conversation. You have them at 8-4, or I have them at 8-4. You have them at 9-3. To me, I mean, how those two records are perceived is all in how it looks. Now, if they go 9-3 and they get blown out by Ohio State, blown out by Wisconsin, blown out at Penn State, we're done here. There's nothing more I need to see. But if you go 8-4 and let's say, kind of like how the NCAA, like the video game simulation played out, where you lose you lose a couple overtime games and, think you're competitive in the other losses that you have. Like, you need to see that there's a path forward. If you go 9-3 or even 8-4 for that matter, and you get blitzed in every game that you lose, there's no path forward to me. That's not progress. That's not equity in the future. So again,
it depends a lot on how Kade Mcnamara plays too, right? Because you have in what most people consider an incredible talent waiting in the wings of JJ McCarthy. And if Harbaugh goes another quarterback that he's just not able to develop to play the position competitively, then how can you risk, that him with that talent moving forward?
Yeah. And I'll say this too, like, how I personally look at this season will be, and we're not going to predict the bowl game because there's so much fluidity to that, who the opponent could be. I'm going to assume they would lose the bowl game because that's what they've done. And that's, that's kind of reflective in what even Luke, you were kind of getting picked on for how optimistic you are. 9-3 it's a good year, but it's nothing to write home about. 8-4, I think people would be pretty disappointed with that. It's kind of a reflection of what they are and what they have been. So
particularly on the road, and that's the way the schedule sets up this year,
Yeah. So I mean, I won't say I'm not worried about losing to Ohio State, but when I judge how this season looks, now if they go out and they're 10-0 going into the 11-0 going into the Ohio State game, and whatever happens, they get blown out, lose whatever it is, I think I will have seen enough in those 11 weeks prior to that.
Yeah.
Again, it depends on what it looks like too. There could be some.
Like if their defense doesn't improve, because again, they're losing all their linebackers. I understand they're going to be studs up front. Secondary's got big question marks, but like I could very much see a 2017 sort of game against Ohio State this year.
Yeah, we'll see. Again, I think I'm more going to judge this team based on what I see against the Michigan States, the Penn States, the Wisconsins, the Washingtons of the world. When I sit here, and first of all, I think we should also say The last I checked, Vegas is over-under is at 7.5, right?
Yeah. So I got the over on that, obviously.
I mean, I'm taking the over there as well. I think there's more value in that, at least from a winning perspective. But even so, yeah, that's to keep in line with the other projections we've done. We're both taking the over on Michigan, and people will say that's optimistic. But to quote,
I'll tell you what, if they don't hit the over, there's going to be a new coach in Ann Arbor next year.
Yeah, for sure. And some people might be rooting for that. I'm not necessarily rooting for that. I'm rooting for. I'm going to give you the most vanilla journalist, blogger, media take there is. I'm rooting for the best outcome for all parties involved.
That's right.
I just hope everyone has fun. I'm going to have fun with football season being back, but it's like I said, it's so difficult to project what is acceptable right now because I need to see how it starts first. Now, it could be a sliding scale too. You come out and you blow out Washington and you kind of run through that first half of your schedule. Now we're going, okay, maybe the expectation becomes you better be competitive or beat Ohio State, right? It depends on what that looks like. But when I look through, I mean, I tiered out the games a couple weeks ago. There are 6 games that Michigan should / probably will win. So to people that think, oh, they're going 5-7 or 4-8 or 3-9, like that's where I think you can kind of take last year and throw it out the window. This is going to be a return to quote unquote normalcy in that they will be close, but no cigar. And it'll probably be a similar type of December as the last few have been in terms of what are they going to do? What's the path forward? I will say, like I said, if they go 8-4 again, I'm not predicting that Jim Harbaugh is going to lose his job, but I mean, I thought he should have lost his job last year. And to me, 8-4 isn't really something where I go, wow, you know what? It sure looks like things are getting turned around here. So
yeah, no, 8-4 would not be great. Because you have to remember, again, I keep saying this, the guys who have been here for 3 years, that what was that, the 2019 class? Is that what that would be? 2018 class? 2018 class, right? Mm-hmm. That was the number 1 class in the Big Ten. Number 1 class in the Big Ten. Like, I mean, there's talent here, man. 8-4 is not good.
No. And I'll say this too, and someone brought this up in the comments. Let me make sure I can properly shout them out. It's from Mathematics. He says, my take on Harbaugh at the moment is comparing him to Brian Kelly at Notre Dame. Put up some decent seasons before going 4-8 in 2016. Now ND is a contender. I still think there is potential. I'm not a huge fan of that because that's kind of the outlier. A lot of guys that have those 4-8 type of seasons, they don't typically rebound to be national championship type of teams. But I will say that there is a chance with the changes that he made. I mean, I think that I like the changes they made defensively. I like streamlining your offensive approach a bit and bringing in a guy like Mike Hart, and who, again, if Josh Gaddis flames out, but Mike Hart is maybe your next offensive coordinator. I don't know. Sharon Moore has a little bit of a bigger role. He's on the offensive line now, which is a position he played, so I feel like he should coach it pretty well. There's potential that, yeah, they could get this turned around. I will say, like, the best case scenario, this is probably a team that, like you said, goes 9-3, 10-2, and wins a bowl game. That could happen. I think that's not out of the question. I think the only thing to me that's kind of off the table is that they're not going to bottom out. It's not going to be a 4-8, 5-7 type of year. And they're not going to go 11-1 or win the Big Ten. But I think anywhere from 7 to 10 wins, I think is kind of the range of outcomes here.
The one thing I'll say about the Notre Dame comparison, I don't think that's a crazy comparison at all. But I also, I know this sounds crazy, but I think the programs are kind of on the same level. I think if Michigan is an independent, cherry picking games against bad ACC teams, I think they could have put an undefeated schedule together at some point. They kind of got lucky last year not having to play Trevor Lawrence against Clemson, and they have made the playoffs, but Notre Dame in the Big Ten East probably never makes the playoffs. So I think Notre Dame right now is obviously playing a little bit better than Michigan, but I don't think there's a huge gap between the two programs, to be honest with you.
Yeah, Notre Dame is in a lot more stable a situation. So
correct.
But again,
an envious situation from where we stand right now.
Yeah, and as we kind of get into final thoughts here, I think that Jim Harbaugh is a smart guy and can be a competent head coach. I don't think he's a hack like people seem like. You can't throw out last year because that was a culmination of a lot
much
of
as I want to.
I would love to erase that from my memory, but that was the culmination of a lot of paper cuts, a lot of things that maybe went unaddressed. I can't give him the benefit of the doubt that it's going to work out, but I also think he's been, if nothing else, pretty competent for the most part, since he arrived. And, I can see there is a scenario where he has his second wind, and after 7 years, after 8 years, it finally clicks. But I know that's frustrating, and I know we get tired of the wait till next year stuff, but I think the best case scenario for this season is kind of a 2015 2.0, where you lose a couple tough games in there, but you've got young guys playing. You've got a lot of this team coming back for next year. You've got whoever wins. I mean, Kade Mcnamara, if he plays well, he'll be your starting quarterback next year. And if he doesn't, J.J. McCarthy will be your quarterback next year. So whatever happens, I just think 8-4, 9-3 is kind of the most realistic outcome. And hopefully what happens to get them there are things that give you hope for next season, or else if not, I don't think Ward Manuel is a stupid guy either. I think the contract that he signed Harbaugh to was pretty forward thinking, and you don't see a lot of that. And you also don't see a lot of coaches that would agree to that. So I think there is a transparency from all sides that, Jim Harbaugh said it himself, like, we're going to beat Ohio State, Michigan State, or we're going to die trying. So you either win those games or you'll be fired, period.
100%, man. You can tell it's football season, though, man. It got dark.
I'm fired up.
I know. I love it. I know. 8:50 here
fun.
On a Monday. And here we go, man. Days are getting a little bit shorter. Air's going to be getting a little bit cooler. And we're going to be kicking it off. We got game week next week. Very fun episode. Appreciate you all hanging out here on YouTube Live and Twitch as well. Appreciate the comments. Always keeping us rolling. I do love it. I've been laughing at a lot of them. Very, very much appreciate you guys hanging out here and love getting your opinions, whether or not we agree with them or not. Anthony, where can we find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at Anthony T. Broome. Again, all the social stuff for Maize and Brew is in the description below. We're on every social media platform. We're wherever you get your podcasts. I will say this, podcast schedule is going to change a bit. You're going to start getting more of them. So I don't know if you're excited about that or not. Combinations and hosts and things we do are kind of going to change a little bit too. So hopefully have more to share on that soon. But yeah, this is fun. Live podcasts are back on Monday nights. We're going to keep the 7:30 time slot. Probably do more of these things on here, or whether it be a Twitter Spaces, a Spotify Green Room. So there's a lot of cool stuff that I will have finalized by the end of the week for interactive opportunities and ways to get involved with our audio content. So appreciate your guys' support as always. It's been a long summer. It was so, despite the ups and downs of what this show and some of the opinions throughout were, I was so excited to be back doing this. And like I said, next time we talk, it's a game week. So that's where we're at.
It's almost here. We just got to keep trucking along. I'm excited to be previewing Western Michigan here next week. Did you do your socials at all, Anthony? Let them know where we can find the podcast, everything like that.
Oh, it's all in the description below, wherever you get your show.
Perfect.
So, if you're here,
and make sure to follow Anthony on Twitter too.
Yeah, yes, that's always appreciated as well. Follow Luke as well at Luke Ghiardi. So he's the glue that keeps me together here. So.
Yep, and make sure to follow Maize and Brew Brewcast. We'll have some news for you, I'd imagine, coming up here very soon. Fun way to kick off the...
I also like one final thought. I also like, as we're closing this out, an hour and 19 minutes in, you finally turned your light on in the background.
It was getting dark, man. We were good for a while. I had the sun coming in. That's what I said. Days are getting a little bit shorter. It's definitely almost football season. Yeah, it's been a fun almost hour and a half. Appreciate you all hanging out here.
And one final shout out to guys like Logan Evans and our other subscribers. Our other subscribers here on the Maize and Brew YouTube channel. For more information on that, just click that join button below, and it'll explain all that stuff too. So thank you for watching.
Yeah, please subscribe. We do a lot of great stuff. Steven Osentowski does a fantastic job with the YouTube channel as well. So make sure you don't miss any of that. For Anthony Broome, I'm Luke Ghiardi. We'll see you next week on Brewcast.